I think there's a real possibility that this drags out on into the season to the trade deadline. But either way, if the Niners are going to trade Jimmy G, it seems to me that they're going to have to pick up most or all of the money on his, but certainly most. And here's why. I mean, most of the teams don't even have the cap space to take him. I don't think there's any teams really in the market for that $27 million contract. So, but from the Niners' perspective, they're right in the position right now where they would potentially be willing to spend $27 million for a third-round comp pick, right? That's kind of what they're bluffing, positioning. That's the position they're in. We might spend $27 million to get the 104th pick in the draft. All right, okay. If you would do that, would you pay $27 million to a team for them to take Jimmy and maybe get a better third-round pick or a late two? I mean, like, if you would pay $27 million for a third-round comp, what does $27 million really get if you offer that to another team? We'll pay for you to have Jimmy Garoppolo this year. Just give us the best pick possible. What do you think they would get if they would pay for the entire freaking salary?
Man, I don't, because Baker's younger. Baker's more talented. Now, he's not the quote unquote leader that Jimmy is. I think I would agree with that. But
real quick, hold on. So the Niners call up the Seattle Seahawks and they're like, look, we will pay for Jimmy Garoppolo to play for you this year. We want a second round pick. The Seattle going to be like, we're good. Thanks. You're paying us to have Jimmy Garoppolo and you just want a second round pick? No, we'll give you fourth.
Yeah, because Baker Mayfield went for what? Wasn't it a fifth? And it was not even a fifth. It's a future fifth, which is basically equivalent to a sixth round pick. Baker Mayfield got traded for a sixth round pick, and they had to eat half that salary. So now Jimmy's going to go for a second, even a third. There's no. I can't see it.
$27 million for your second round pick. We have to have Jimmy though.
That's.
Can we cut Jimmy? Can we just cut him? Maybe they'll do that.
How messed up would that be? Oh my gosh!
$27 million for the second round pick. Okay, we'll just cut Jimmy though. I don't know.
Yeah, no, because again, it goes back to
willing to spend $27 million for that third round comp. You might just buy a pick.
That again, to me, like this goes back to this is a major mistake. If you pay a single solitary cent for Jimmy Garoppolo and it doesn't net at least a second round pick, you can't make that trade. You can't do it.
Would you rather have a second or third round pick or $27 million rolled over to next year?
$27 million, no question about it.
Yeah, agree. But I think the Niners would consider doing this because, to me, again, it's all about John Lynch's win-loss record. I mean, he's a good general manager. He's got a good team. He's got a good roster. But the trades, he hasn't won a lot of them. DeForest Buckner, D Ford. I think he's sensitive about that. So I think it means something to him to get that third round comp pick, to get something and be like, look, we moved off of Jimmy, but we got back what we gave up for him. I think that means something to him. It shouldn't, but I think it does.
It certainly shouldn't, because I think they've already won that trade. I mean, let's be real. You're talking about a guy who was essentially your starter. I mean, he didn't start because he was injured or whatever, but he was your starting quarterback going into 4 seasons. That's worth a second round pick for a team that was making the playoffs and making deep runs. Whether it was him or not, they've already won that trade. I mean, a second round pick is not a lot for a guy who can start in the league at the quarterback position. It just isn't. They've already won the trade. So, like, why at this point you're being petty about it?
I mean, the problem really wasn't the trade; it was the extension.
Right.
Well, I mean, and not after 5 games, he's the highest paid player in the league. That's great, and you're going to give him every single penny of that deal too. That's even better.
Honestly, it wasn't even the extension grant. It's not taking the outs in that. They've had outs since the end of 2019. You passed on Tom Brady. You passed on starting Trey Lance. Right?
I wanted them to get Tom Brady.
I know, but you the franchise, right? And so you had multiple outs as a franchise, and you chose not to take those outs. Yeah. That's where I have the issue, because Parag actually did some really nasty work in setting up that contract, giving you multiple ways to get out. And you're like, oh no, we'll just and then even better, if they do keep him this year, Grant. Now you're actually saying, not only did we pass on Tom Brady, not only did we allow our rookie quarterback to develop the way that we should have so that we could go win a Super Bowl this year, but to top it off, he's a backup and we're still going to pay him this money. That's crazy talk.
Yeah, that makes it look bad. Sean says, oh, thank you for the $20, Sean. I just got some insider information. My cousin is a mid-level staffer for the Niners org, and he overheard a meeting. He found out Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the team. I liked it. I liked it.
That's good.
He set it up. I thought he really was going to have something there for a second.
I did too.
That was hilarious.
Isn't it crazy? I thought it was going to have to do with like price or something like that. That's awesome. That
Unreal. Cool. Can't believe it. John, can you confirm? John, I just wanted to call. I'm hearing from multiple sources that Jimmy Garoppolo is still in your house. This can't be true. Tell me. Can't be true. It's July 20th. On the goal line says, Jesse, I still want that Jimmy G bet if Jimmy G ends up in Seattle.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we'll take that bet.
Zach Bowen says, won't surprise me if Jimmy G doesn't land with anyone. Love the show. Go Niners. Man, that's harsh. I think people would love him as a backup.
For sure.
I mean, he's such a
Jimmy
good guy.
Backup?
Just for the the potlucks alone. I mean, he brings pizza. People like him. He's the life of the party. You got to have him on the team.
He's got a swimming pool. Nobody else on the team has a swimming pool. Jimmy Garoppolo has a swimming pool like that.
Remember
that
those
alone.
potlucks at the end of the soccer season? Like whoever brought the pizza was like, "You're my new best friend. Thank you."
Oh, for sure.
I didn't know you were going to be that kid, but I'm glad you are. Miguel Santana says Kyle already said D Ford won't be on this team. Yeah, he says a lot of things. All I know is that he's still on the team.
Sure.
What are you waiting for?
They could have cut him after June 1st. They could have cut him any day after June 1st. That was it. So why? I'm not saying I'm not willing to go to bat for him and say he's for sure making this team. It's just a little weird that when you could have cut him for, I don't know, the last 40 or so days, you've chosen not to. That's a little strange.
Flav says Jimmy has actually led a game-winning drive in the NFL. Trey hasn't done anything? ? Exclamation point. Is he asking? In a loud voice? I think. In what profession do you just assume someone knows how to do something with experience? Football. Use your head, Jess. You're hoping. Hold on. So by Flav's logic, any NFL quarterback who has led a game-winning drive is a better quarterback than Trey Lance, or more valuable than Trey Lance. But that's just not the case. I mean, there's a reason why Trey Lance went top 5, why teams were interested in him. I'd rather have him than Brian Hoyer. I'd rather have him than Nick Mullins. I'd rather have him than Jimmy Garoppolo. If the Niners had a Pro Bowl quarterback, there'd be a discussion in sitting this guy another year. But they don't. Jimmy is not good. He has the best team, the best defense, the best weapons, and the guy can't make it to the Pro Bowl. It's time for someone else to get a shot. And if Trey Lance can't get it done, then someone else will get a shot. All we know is that he's the next man up. He's up. It's his turn. We've seen enough of Jimmy. This is Jimmy's fault, Flav. If Jimmy were better, Trey'd be on the bench still, but he's not.
Well, while you were talking, I just looked up, 6 or so quarterbacks that have come into the league in the last few years and were rookies. They all had multiple game-winning drives. So to assume that somebody, so if something hasn't happened by your proclamation, if something hasn't happened, that means it cannot happen.
Yeah.
So why does any quarterback ever come into the pros and ever have a game-winning drive? Because it's never been shown. So I think assuming that a quarterback can play the quarterback position in the fourth quarter, just like he could in the first quarter, is not that weird of an assumption.
Also, Flav, just wait a month. This is going to be, these are all statistical anomalies because of the pandemic and because Kyle Shanahan had a bad win-loss record when he drafted Trey Lance and needed to get some wins out of Jimmy Garoppolo. Just wait for it. This, all the things he's never done, he'll do it in September. So just wait for it. And once Trey starts winning, then the Jimmy Garoppolo hive, the Jimmy Garoppolo stands are going to have nothing to point to with their guy. Jimmy's going to be standing there holding the clipboard saying, I just win. And his replacement's going to be there winning with better numbers, playing better football. And Jimmy's, whatever he was going to make on the open market next year, it's just going to go down because everyone's going to look at him and be like, I'm sorry, remind me what you did, what you brought to the table in San Francisco. Because it looks like nothing is what's going to happen.
Let's also say this. Again, let's go back to the original point. nobody for sure knows what Trey's going to be. We're projecting, right? And we're using past experience to project, right? Whether good or bad. None of us truly know. But one thing we do know for a fact is Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers will not win a Super Bowl. And here's how we know that. We know that in two ways. One, he's had multiple chances and has not gotten it done. That's one.
Mm.
Two, we know from past experiences in the NFL. One thing I can tell you is no quarterback since 1986, other than Joe Flacco, has won a Super Bowl without making a Pro Bowl. So why would Jimmy be any different? It's just not going to happen. So if we know that Jimmy is not the answer, we don't know if Trey's the answer or not. We know Jimmy's not the answer. So why would we continue to waste time on a guy that we know is not the answer because we have a guy that we're not sure is the answer or not? You have to figure it out.
Flacco was like strangely elite in the playoffs for whatever reason.
Extremely elite.
I mean,
very
in his
opposite
career,
of Jimmy.
He threw 25 touchdown passes and 10 picks in the playoffs. Like in 2012, he threw 11 touchdowns and no picks. You understand how good he was that year that he won the Super? Jimmy's never done anything like that. He's been a passenger at best and an arsonist at worst in the playoffs. Joe Flacco, like, outplayed Tom Brady, outplayed Peyton Manning. I mean, multiple times. I don't know who that guy thought he was. Eli Manning had a little bit of that in him too. Two guys who were really mediocre quarterbacks, but in the playoffs, they were actually better.
Yeah.
They were better.
Yeah, something about him.
As opposed to Jimmy, who's way worse. Okay. Thank you, Flav. F you, Jobu. I do it myself. I don't get it. Is it possible the Niners allowed Jimmy Garoppolo to seek a trade to prove the lack of a starter market so that they can renegotiate his contract? Hey, man, you want to be a starter? You think a team wants you? Go ahead. Let us know which team that is, because it's not Cleveland. And then the only team that actually has cap space to trade for you in your 27. So you let me know. It's not Cleveland. When you find out that it's no one, let us know, because what we're going to do, what they could do, is cut him on the last day of camp and say, look, you could leave and go somewhere else and maybe start, but you don't know their playbook. You haven't been in their training camp, and we'll pay you more. We'll pay you $1 million more than your best offer just to be our backup. And who knows? If Trey Lance get hurt, you can be back in the saddle. So we'll see. Does Jimmy Garoppolo bet on himself, take less to maybe start somewhere else? The Niners could save money that way. They could do that.
And I'm not necessarily fully against that. I personally don't think having Jimmy here is good for Jimmy or is good for the 49ers, just because this is a guy who was looked at as a leader on this team and now all of a sudden is here to take a backup role. But I'm not totally against cutting him and then re-signing him for, say, 8 million, right. 10 million even,
right? Just
for that insurance, and then maybe give him some incentives that it's like, hey, if you start 4 games or 3 games, you get X amount, something like that. Like, I'm not necessarily totally against that.
Run to Seattle and play behind that atrocious offensive line and try to learn that system in 2 weeks and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm more open to that than just keeping him at 27 million. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that might be what the Niners do. This good call. Whoever
that's a great comment.
Daniel Elman says that the Niners stayed at 12 and drafted Mac Jones. Are they Super Bowl chance right now? I think yes. Trey might be better long term, but one chip equals. I don't think so. I'm not that excited about Mac Jones. He was pretty not so great down the stretch, not so great in the playoffs. I think he's an average NFL quarterback, which is remarkable for a rookie, but I don't think he's going to be ever much better than average, in my opinion. He's like Tua. He's the right-handed Tua.
I don't see the over love for Mac. I mean, Mac's going to be fine. Like, he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to start in the league for many, many years. I mean,
top 10 though.
He was slightly better than Jimmy last year, but I don't know if he was enough better to make them win a Super Bowl. I mean, he didn't look that great against Buffalo in the playoffs.
To win a Super Bowl, I think you have to have a quarterback who's either top 10 in the league or can play like it for an entire playoff stretch. Foles could play like it in the playoffs. Flacco could do it in the playoffs. Eli could do it in the playoffs. Jim can't. He's not a top 10 quarterback in the regular season, and he's definitely not one in the playoffs. Mac Jones, he just seems like good, but not good enough. Like a better Jimmy.
And maybe Mac Jones gets to that Kirk Cousins level, right? And I've been on record for saying that if this team had Kirk Cousins, they'd have a couple rings. I do believe that. But Mac Jones as a rookie was not as good as Kirk Cousins at this point in his career. Maybe in 2-3 years, maybe you can have that argument.
I'm not 100% sold on Kirk Cousins either, because he is good, but I mean, had some
More
real
sold on
sleeper
Kirk than I
performances.
am Mac.
Oh, true. I agree. Nathan Flores says, I think Flav is Jimmy Two Pigs, or one of his brothers. Matthew Sanders says, Flav been on the sauce since noon Pacific today. He's the unmasked superego of Jimmy Stan, or he's Jimmy's crush. Can't tell yet. Hard to say, but he actually just left another one. We're going to get to it in a minute. C. Turley says, Niners had an elite drive, Flav. Niners had an elite drive, Flav. They won in spite of Jimmy. Can Trey do worse than Jimmy? No, he can't. You both agreed Kyle's playbook is more explosive with Trey. I mean, all the good things they say about what Jimmy does, like, his completion percentage, yards per attempt, it's the system. I mean, Mullins had a high yards per attempt. Lance has a high yards per attempt. He had a higher yards per completion than Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, a lot of it is just the system. And Jimmy doesn't even do it that well.
The argument I've been making since last year, Grant, as to why Trey Lance should have started last year, this team ran the ball 49% of the time.
Right.
So if you run the ball 49% of the time, can Trey Lance help in the thing that you do half the time?
Yeah.
Certainly he can.
It's
Does Jimmy
to run when it's 11 on 11 than 10 on 11.
Right. Jimmy doesn't help at all in the run game.
And again, like, why are you running that much? You're invested heavy. You have an all-pro wide receiver. You have a formerly all-pro tight end. You spent a first-round pick that you traded up for as a number 2. You're very invested in your receivers. And yet you have to run the ball more than any team other than Seattle because of Jimmy, not because that's what you want to do. Jimmy's can't make it seem like, well, that's just what Kyle wants to do. Like, no, not really. I mean, he wants to be somewhat balanced, but Jimmy forces him to throw this much, to run that more, it's not just, it's out of whack. It's more than any other team except for Seattle. So, yeah.
To me, it's basic math. So if you help in 49% of the game, let's say the other 51%, he's only effective in 25% of that. Well, you're still helping in 74% of the game. Even if Jimmy helps in all 51%, that's still less because he's not helping in the run game. Like, this is simple math to me.
Yeah. 808 Niners says the Pats drafted Duke Dawson, a DB, with the Niners pick. If they get anything for Jimmy, it's a win. They made a Super Bowl and an NFC Championship game. That's greater value than Duke Dawson. Didn't they trade down and get a bunch of people?
I think so. I don't
think it was just
exactly.
one guy. I'll have to check that out. Thanks for the $10. So I think they traded down and made it like a lot of people. That's
Either way, I think that the Niners have won, right?
Yeah, move on, John. Flav, love you, man. He's giving me like $100 today. This guy's really nice. LOL, all love, fellas. Fun seeing all the people in the chat get fired up. Would pay double for this. No, really, there needs to be more people bringing this perspective to the argument because it's a fun argument. Hope I'm wrong about Trey, but if not, I'll at least get to make Grant wear it for the next 5 years. Yeah, that's true. If Trey ends up being worse than Jimmy Garoppolo, I have to say I will be really, really shocked, and it will shake me because I feel like I just believe it, and I feel like I've seen enough, and it's a truth, an axiom that I live by. And if it turns out that I'm wrong, it's really going to humble me, but I'm not wrong. Now, I'm not saying Trey's going to be Patrick Mahomes. I never said he would be elite or that he would end up necessarily justifying the trade. But from day one, I'm like, this guy's better than Jimmy. He's better than Jimmy. That's it. And that's what I'm standing on.
If the bet is –
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, if the bet is him being Patrick Mahomes, I'm not taking that bet. But if the bet is he's better than Jimmy, I'm betting my house and everything in it confidently that he will be that in his career. No question about it. But Flav, I got to give you credit because you're right. At the end of the day, nobody's going to remember Flav from June 20th on Grant's show. If you never show your face again, you win, right? Like, it's cool. You can walk away. Everybody remembers what I say and what Grant says here on 49ers After Dark. And it's here on video so we can be held accountable. People know where to find us. So that's a smart move by you.
There is a big difference between Jimmy and Trey. Steve Young's talked about it. Jimmy doesn't seem to care. Like, he'll throw 3 picks in practice, come out smiling like he just lit it up. Like, he just has this next play attitude, which to me, like, bothers me. But because to me, it's over the top with Jimmy. But actually, it's a good thing. Like, you don't need to be having a guy like fretting over one imperfection. Trey's on the other side. Trey's a perfectionist. And what Steve's saying is he can't be too much of a perfectionist because there's a lot of pressure on him. And, like Trubisky was too much of a perfectionist. The guy I think of is Alex Smith. Alex Smith is a perfectionist. And there'd be times when a guy was open and he would see it, but he wouldn't pull the trigger because he wasn't open enough. And I think Trey might be like that a little bit, but that's okay because he's not going to turn the ball over a lot, I don't think. And if he's a super Alex Smith, like an Alex Smith with a super strong arm and faster legs, and like that's a really good quarterback. That's a better. I mean, Alex Smith was better than Jimmy Garoppolo. A super Alex Smith, that's not exactly probably what you thought you were getting when you traded up. But if that's the floor for Trey Lance, Alex Smith, okay, I like that. If that's the floor,
the thing about I mean, at the end of the day, like, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's it. That's it. Like, we think the floor is much higher than Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's really all it comes down to. And we'll see. Time's gonna tell, but I'm very confident in what Trey Lance is ultimately gonna bring. But I will say this: you were talking about the perfectionist side, so maybe mid game, it's not the best to kind of worry about the last play. Like, I think there is an art to being able to forget the last play and move on, good or bad. A lot of quarterbacks talk about that. But I can also tell you that one thing that Jimmy hasn't done because of that aw shucks attitude is he hasn't taken it seriously enough, in my opinion, to fix those routine mistakes that he makes, and he continually makes them.
Well put.
Trey Lance already, and this is all over film if you go watch it, will make a mistake. And later on in that very same game, not the next game, that very same game will get the same exact look and make the right decision because he is a perfectionist and he is holding himself accountable. Just like when a game is over and Jimmy is the reason that they lost and they say, hey, Jimmy, what happened on those picks? Well, we got to do we. But when they ask Trey Lance, he's like, yeah, I got to be better there. This is what I was looking at. I got to be better.
You know who was a perfectionist to a fault? Nick Mullins.
Oh, for sure.
Like, if the game got off to a hot start, he'd be confident. He'd be good. He come in relief. He light it up. He'd be good. That game against the Raiders, he was good. If it didn't go well in the first quarter, it was snowball on him. And you could sort of see him like lose confidence and lose belief in himself. And it's like, man, you can't have that temperament and be a starting quarterback or be a professional athlete. Definitely not a starting quarterback. So I don't think Trey's going to be like that, where he throws a pick in the first quarter and all of a sudden he just has the worst start ever. I think we've seen him. He's a very confident person, very confident athlete. And I think he can bounce back. Steve Young was a perfectionist to a degree. He just wasn't too much of one. I think Trey Lance, anyway, it was interesting for Steve to talk about it. Like, it's a good thing, but not too much. And this is where he's at. Yeah. He has to make sure he's not too much. Because I guess the pressure is, you got to replace a guy who won 75% of his starts. There's no margin for error here. Same thing with Wentz. You got to replace a guy who won the Super Bowl. There's no margin for error here. That's tough. But at the same time, you got to realize, like, dude, you're replacing Jimmy G. That guy didn't care. I mean, he cared. But, I mean, he had no conscience is what I'm trying to say. He had no conscience. You don't have to have a conscience or a big one. Just don't throw.
And he didn't, to me, again, he didn't have the drive to ever want to be a great player. Like, I just didn't see that from Jimmy.
Double B Studio says, let's not forget Jimmy practices picks in practice. Trey practices avoiding sacks and completing passes. Kyle has more to prove than Trey, right? Right. Good point.
I mean, if Trey isn't good, it's ultimately, I mean, we'll get made fun of a little bit, but Kyle might lose his job.
Like Tom Brady, no. Matthew Stafford, no. Trey Lance, yes. So, I mean, there's a little bit of pressure on this. Brian Beltran says Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl skills completion. Okay. Okay. People love them some Mac Jones. Brian Beltran says Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl. Jimmy did not. Yeah, I don't know.
But he was an alternate.
Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl. He's an alternate. Yeah, that makes sense. I remember people saying Jimmy looked better than Brady in practice. Tell me when he actually does something. I can't believe that. I also remember, I think that was propaganda because it was Tom Curran. Someone said that Jimmy Garoppolo was the worst practice quarterback they ever had in New England. And that to me sounds correct because he is the worst practice quarterback I've ever seen. I mean, Brian Hoyer was better in practice than Jimmy Garoppolo. I cannot imagine that in New England he was lighting it up in practice, and over here he'd be this much of a liability in his own practice setting. No, I don't buy that at all.
Didn't he throw like 5 picks in a row?
The players were down on Jimmy. I mean, we heard what Martellus Bennett and Julian Edelman and Jimmy have the same agent. Julian Edelman and Martellus Bennett were down on Jimmy. Jimmy was never going to lead that team, and that never got leaked out. I don't think John Lynch knew when he traded for Jimmy Garoppolo that actually the locker room had basically vetoed Jimmy Garoppolo, and he was never going to have that team. I don't think he knew that. So I don't know how we got in this. Thanks, Flav. Appreciate you. People giving it more than all
Hey,
offseason.
Flav, also open invitation. I mean, you can call in. I do Thursday open mics on my show. I'll gladly have the. Yeah, I mean, I love that you're paying here, but like, if you want to actually have the conversation and go back and forth, we can do that on my channel for sure.
Flav says, no, Jess, I actually want to be wrong. Emotional hedge. If Trey is good, Niners are good. I'm happy. If not, at least I was right. That's a good place to be as a fan.
For sure.
You know, because you're never wrong. The team is wrong. Why? You're not wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Flav, appreciate you. Delby Studio says, I say Kyle has more to prove than Trey this year because third downs need to improve as well as red zone TDs. Kyle uses Trey right. Kyle will prove he can coach up quarterbacks and turn them champions. I mean, he's got to prove that he made the right choice at quarterback. You know, he's really not made the right choice at quarterback yet. It's year 6. If he could make the right choice now, all will be forgiven. Because, you know, Patrick Mahomes is lurking. That decision, the Tom Brady decision, hasn't gotten past that.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
808 Niner says they won the trade because if not, they don't get Jimmy. Jimmy doesn't get hurt, and we don't get Bosa. It's a lot of ways to look at it.
All right.
Sean says Trey Lance's number one asset is how hard he works to become better, setting aside rare physical freaks like Randy Moss. The vast majority of the greats in sports obsessively worked on their game. Yeah. I think his temperament's a lot like Alex Smith, who did everything right. He's just way more gifted than Alex Smith was.
That's the key. That's the key is he does have maybe not free. He doesn't have freakish physical traits, but for a quarterback, he's pretty damn athletic. He certainly has a top tier arm, and he has the drive and the want to be better. That's good.
If there was a spider chart, you know what I mean, of like all the different attributes a quarterback could have, his would be pretty well balanced and large. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now I know some people might have a better spiral or more accuracy, but just the whole thing, I think he's the most gifted quarterback I've ever seen. Still, I think he just is above average in so many, because it's like dozens and dozens and dozens of things that quarterbacks have to do. But
for sure,
Jimmy lost his drive after winning with Tom, says William Bennett. Did he? He had a drive.
Yeah, he does. He does have more rings than any quarterback in the league other than Tom right now. So maybe.